The first thing Celeste Harrington noticed was the mop bucket. Not the man holding it. Not the way his eyes moved across the lobby like he was reading measurements no one else could see. Not the little boy sitting beside the security desk with a red toy race car balanced on his knee. Just the mop bucket. The faded work shirt. And the old boots that had been polished so many times the leather looked tired. Daniel Vale stood under the silver Harrington Automotive logo with one hand on his janitor application and the other resting on the handle of a tool bag he had not been asked to bring. The lobby was all glass, black stone, and quiet money. Employees walked softly there, as if sound itself had to ask permission. Then Celeste looked at the paper in her assistant's hand and laughed loud enough for everyone near the front desk to turn. "A janitor," she said, glancing Daniel up and down. "You applied here as a janitor. And under skills you wrote prototype machining and engine test support." Her voice carried across the lobby with a bright, cruel smoothness. Two junior executives smiled because she smiled. A receptionist looked away too late. Daniel said nothing. He only shifted his weight so Noah, his 9-year-old son, would not see the way people were looking at him, but children see what adults try to hide. Noah's fingers tightened around the red toy race car his mother had bought him before she died. And his eyes dropped to his father's boots. Celeste stepped closer, heels clicking against the marble. She was 42, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than Daniel's rent. With a gold watch bright enough to catch the lobby lights every time she moved her wrist, Harrington Automotive had made her a billionaire before most people learned how to run a meeting. And she wore that success like armor. She took the application from her assistant. "Read the top line," and smirked. "Daniel Vale," she said, as if the name meant nothing. "Night shift janitorial staff. Available immediately. Willing to work weekends." She tapped the page with one manicured nail. "This company builds machines that collectors beg to touch. We do not need a man who confuses a broom closet with an engineering department." Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed low. "I'm here for the job that was posted." Celeste turned toward the employees, now pretending not to listen. "Did you hear that he's here for the posted job? How noble." Then she looked back at him with a kind of amusement that had nothing warm in it. "Come with me, Mr. Vale. Since you claim all these wonderful skills, I want to show you what real engineering looks like." She turned without waiting for his answer. Security moved beside Daniel, not touching him, but close enough to remind him he did not belong. Daniel looked at Noah. "Stay right here, buddy." Noah nodded, but the hurt in his face followed Daniel across the lobby. "If you have ever been judged before anyone knew your story, stay with this one. Tell me where you are listening from. And remember this, some people laugh at worn-out shoes because they have never had to walk through loss. But sometimes the man they mock is the only one in the room who knows what is really broken." Celeste led Daniel through a private elevator that required 2 badges and a fingerprint scan. The air changed when the doors opened below. The lobby's perfume and polished silence gave way to cold concrete, old fuel, and machine oil. This was the Harrington Heritage Garage, a hidden floor beneath the headquarters where the company kept its trophies. Concept bodies, old test parts, and the legends it used to sell new cars to rich men who wanted history with horsepower. Under soft white lights sat covered shapes and display cases. On the far side of the room, mounted on a black steel stand like a dead animal under glass, was the Harrington X7 prototype engine, Unit VX7A. It was not beautiful in the way showroom engines were beautiful. There was no polished chrome, no glossy plaque that made it easy for visitors. The aluminum block had dulled with age. The intake ports were capped. Old sensor leads hung in careful loops, and a dusty cover plate sat near the oil gallery like a scar no one wanted to discuss. A brass sign in front of it read, "Harrington X7 Legacy Prototype. Non-operational display unit." Celeste stopped beside it and folded her arms. "This engine represents the beginning of our modern performance division. she said. It is worth more in history than you will earn in 20 lifetimes. And even our current engineers do not touch it without permission. Daniel did not look at the sign. He looked at the cover plate. He looked at the angle of 2 fasteners. He looked at a faint ridge in the casting just below the painted edge, where someone years ago had brushed on black industrial coating to hide corrosion or something else. His hand did not reach out. He knew better, but his eyes changed. The boredom in Celeste's face sharpened for a moment because she noticed that change before she understood it. Daniel had looked at the engine the way a father looks at a sleeping child in a hospital bed. With fear, memory, and recognition all locked behind silence. What Celeste snapped. Do you think you can fix it? One of the executives behind her laughed under his breath. Daniel kept his eyes on the oil gallery cover. No, he said. Not from here. Celeste smiled. How honest. You see, Mr. Vale, this is why people should not decorate applications with words they barely understand. Daniel finally looked at her. Your plaque is wrong. The garage went quiet in a small, uncomfortable way. Not silent yet. Just quieter. The kind of quiet people make when they want someone else to speak first. Celeste's smile did not move, but her eyes did. Excuse me, the plaque says display prototype. Daniel said. That is not what this was. Celeste's assistant, Mila Torres, looked from Daniel to the engine. Reggie Cole, the head of garage operations, straightened beside a locked tool cabinet. Celeste let out a short laugh. But it sounded thinner now. And you know this from standing 6 feet away with a mop bucket upstairs. Daniel did not answer the insult. He nodded toward the cover plate. Those 2 fasteners are clocked wrong for the early VX units. They only changed that after the starvation issue. Reggie's expression shifted before he caught himself. Celeste saw it. Reggie, she said sharply. Is there a reason our janitor applicant is using words from an internal failure report? Reggie cleared his throat. The oiling issue was part of the old X7 development rumors. A lot of people know pieces of it. Daniel turned just enough to look at him. Not that piece. The words were quiet. But they carried. Celeste looked down at the application again. Perhaps to regain control by making him small on paper. This time she actually read the name instead of performing it for the room. Daniel Vale. For 1 second. The confidence in her face loosened. Her eyes moved from the application to the dead engine, then back to the application. The name did not sit there like an ordinary name anymore. It sat like a key in a lock she thought had been welded shut. Who told you to use that name, she asked. Daniel's expression changed only slightly. But Mila noticed it. So did Reggie. There are insults a man can ignore because he has carried heavier things. But a name is not a jacket. It is not something a powerful person gets to question because your shoes are worn. Daniel's voice stayed calm. It's the name my father gave me. Celeste's face hardened fast. Too fast. Security will escort you back to the lobby. Daniel nodded once. Am I being denied the janitor position? Celeste's mouth tightened. You were never being considered. She pushed the application into Mila's hands. And Mr. Vale is not to return to this floor. Noah was standing when Daniel came out of the elevator. He had been told to stay seated. But fear had pulled him to his feet. The toy race car was still in his hand. Its red paint chipped on one side from years of being carried in pockets. Dropped under kitchen tables, and rescued from couch cushions. Daniel gave him a small smile. The kind fathers use when they do not want their children to know how badly the world has hit them. Come on, buddy, he said. Behind them. The receptionist pretended not to hear. One of the executives whispered something that made another laugh. Noah looked back once at the giant Harrington logo, then at the paper in Mila's hand, then at his father. Outside. The afternoon sun hit the glass tower so hard it made the building look untouchable. Daniel walked toward his old pickup parked at the far edge of the visitor lot because the closer spaces were reserved for clients. executives, and people with cars that did not drip oil. Noah climbed in quietly. For almost a minute, neither of them spoke. Traffic moved beyond the gate. A valet guided a silver sports car toward the entrance. Finally, Noah turned the toy car over in his lap and asked, "Dad, was your name supposed to be on that engine?" Daniel kept both hands on the steering wheel. His answer took a long time. A long time ago. Our name was in that room. The garage Daniel rented was 12 miles away, squeezed between a shuttered tire shop and a laundromat with 3 broken letters in its sign. Vale Repair was not really a business anymore. Not in the way it had been before Mara got sick. There were still tools on the walls. Still an old lift that groaned but worked. Still customers who came when they could pay in cash or food or favors. But the lease notice taped to the office door did not care about loyalty. It said Daniel had 12 days to pay $4,800 in back rent and utilities or vacate. Noah saw the paper before Daniel could pull it down. "Is that why you needed the janitor job?" he asked. Daniel folded the notice and slid it into his pocket. "Partly." Noah placed the red toy car on the workbench and watched his father wash his hands in the utility sink. The grease did not leave all at once. It never did. Some of it seemed to live in the lines of his fingers. On the shelf above the sink sat a metal box Daniel had not opened in months. Mara had made him promise not to throw it away. Even when medical bills took almost everything else. "Your father built things with those hands," she had said once. When Noah was too little to understand. Someday he needs to know that. Daniel dried his hands, stared at the box, and then reached for it. Inside were old badges, folded shop notes, a cracked photo of a younger Daniel standing beside 2 men in a prototype bay, and a spiral notebook with oil stains along the edges. The badge at the top read, "Harrington Advanced Garage. Temporary Technical Staff. Daniel Vale." Noah leaned closer. "You worked there." Daniel nodded. "When I was younger." Noah touched the photo carefully. "Who is that?" Daniel looked at the older man standing beside him. Broad-shouldered, smiling like the camera had interrupted work he loved. "Your grandfather, Elias Vale." Noah's eyes widened. He worked there too. Daniel closed the box halfway, then stopped. Hiding the story had never protected Noah. It had only taught him that silence was normal. "Your grandfather designed machine parts for people who got their names on buildings," Daniel said. "I helped in the test bay. Small work. Mostly measuring, machining, checking things after long nights when engines failed and important people went home." Noah looked toward the lease notice peeking from Daniel's pocket. "Then why are we here and they're there?" It was the kind of question only a child can ask cleanly. Without cruelty and without escape, Daniel opened the notebook instead of answering. Page after page showed measurements, dates, sketches, and shorthand only a shopman would understand. Then he found what he had hoped he would not find and feared he would. VX 7A. Reftsy. Oil gallery cover. Revised fastener orientation. D. V. Final pass. Daniel sat down slowly on the stool beside the workbench. In the private garage, he had only seen the engine for seconds. But memory, when tied to guilt, can be sharper than a photograph. The fasteners had been clocked the way he had clocked them 16 years ago after the second prototype starved on a long, high-speed pull. The ridge under the black coating had been exactly where Elias told him to mark the revision before management changed the documentation chain. Daniel turned another page and found a rough sketch of the hidden stamp location near the oil gallery cover. D. Vale. VX 7A. Reu. His breath left him in a slow line. Noah watched his father's face. They took it away. Daniel closed the notebook gently. Some people did. He did not say Celeste. In 2010, she had been an heir with an office upstairs. Not the CEO she was now. But families can inherit more than money. They can inherit lies, polish them, and call them legacy. Daniel took out his old phone and photographed the notebook pages. Then he stopped. If he sent anything, Harrington Legal would bury him before sunset. If he stayed quiet, the garage would be gone in 12 days. And Noah would learn that men with clean shoes get to decide what names matter. Daniel looked at the toy race car on the bench. "Tomorrow," he said, more to himself than to Noah. "I'm going back." He did not make it past the security desk the next morning. Reggie Cole was waiting near the lobby elevators with 2 guards and an expression that tried to be professional but did not quite manage cold. "Daniel," he said, quietly enough that the receptionist could pretend this was not public. "You cannot go downstairs." Daniel held up both hands, empty except for a manila folder. "I'm not here to trespass. I'm here to request a supervised inspection of Unit VX7A. Reggie's eyes flicked to the folder. "That is not how this works." Daniel nodded. "Then tell Ms. Harrington I am giving her one chance to correct the plaque before the Investor Heritage presentation." The name of the presentation changed the air around them. Reggie knew it. The receptionist knew it. Mila Torres, who had just stepped out of the elevator with a tablet in hand, definitely knew it. In 6 days, Harrington Automotive was hosting collectors, museum investors, and board members around its heritage line, using the X7 legacy as the emotional centerpiece. Provenance was not decoration at that level. It was money, trust, and public record. Mila stopped walking. Reggie lowered his voice. "Where did you hear about that?" Daniel looked at him. "From the same place I learned the plaque was wrong." "The engine." Celeste arrived before Reggie could answer. And this time she did not laugh. That made her more dangerous. She came through the glass doors with General Counsel Evan Pike beside her. A narrow man in a Navy suit, who looked as if he billed by the minute, even when breathing. Celeste's eyes went straight to the folder. "Mr. Vale, you were told not to return." Daniel remained still. "I was told I was not being hired. I was not told Harrington would continue displaying false historical information connected to my family name." Evan lifted a hand. "Careful. Any public accusation against this company without documentation will be treated as defamation and interference with a pending commercial partnership." There it was. Not laughter. Pressure. The kind rich people put into sentences so it sounds cleaner than a threat. Daniel glanced toward the lobby where Noah had stood the day before. Though Noah was at school now and did not have to watch this part. "I'm not asking for a microphone," Daniel said. "I'm asking to remove one inspection cover under supervision." Celeste's eyes narrowed. "You think I will let an unemployed janitor applicant touch a priceless prototype because he found an old rumor online?" Daniel opened the folder and slid one photocopied page across the security desk. He had covered most of the notebook, but left the diagram, date, and fastener orientation visible. Reggie leaned in before he could stop himself. His reaction betrayed him. It was small, but Daniel saw it. So did Celeste. "Reggie," she said, "step back." But Reggie did not step back immediately. He looked at the drawing, then at Daniel, then toward the elevator that led down to the Heritage garage. "That cover pattern," Reggie said carefully, "was never published." Evan Pike took the page and studied it. He was not a mechanic, but he knew the shape of a problem when it began to cost money. Celeste reached for the paper. Daniel put one finger on the edge first. "I'm not here to steal anything. I'm not here to embarrass anyone who tells the truth. Give me 30 seconds with Reggie watching. If I'm wrong, I walk away and never mention VX7A again." Celeste hated the offer because it sounded reasonable in front of witnesses. She looked at Mila, who had not moved. She looked at Reggie, whose face had already become a question. Then she looked at the lobby cameras. A public refusal could be explained. A private refusal could be managed. But a refused inspection before a major heritage event, after a man produced a matching unpublished diagram. Was dangerous. In a way, mockery was not. "Fine," she said at last. 30 seconds. No tools except what Reggie provides. No photographs. No recording. And if you are wrong, Mr. Vale, you will sign a statement admitting you attempted to mislead this company. Daniel nodded. And if I'm right, Celeste's smile came back. But only as a weapon. You won't be. Downstairs. The Heritage garage felt colder than it had the day before. This time, no one spoke loudly. Reggie unlocked a small drawer and removed a driver with a numbered handle. Evan stood behind them, phone in hand. Not recording, but ready to call someone. Mila stayed near the door with Daniel's application held against her tablet. Celeste stood on the far side of the engine as if the dead prototype were a table in a negotiation she still owned. Daniel approached Unit VX7A slowly, stopping just short until Reggie nodded. He did not touch the famous parts. He did not grandstand. He did not give a speech about engineering or genius. He pointed to the oil gallery cover and said, "Top left. Bottom right. Quarter turn loose first. If you take them straight out, the cover binds because the revision plate was hand-fit." Reggie hesitated. Then followed the instruction. The first fastener moved with a dry click. The second resisted. Then freed. Daniel watched the way a man watches a lock open on a door he never thought he would enter again. When the cover lifted, a thin line of old black coating cracked along the edge. Beneath it, on a hidden surface no visitor would ever see, was a stamped mark half buried under paint and time. Reggie leaned closer. Mila took one step forward without meaning to. Even Evan Pike stopped looking like a lawyer for 3 seconds. Daniel did not need anyone to read the whole stamp yet. The partial letters were enough. D. Va. Below them, the beginning of a code VX7A. Reggie whispered something under his breath that sounded almost like an apology. The small room went silent. Not the polite quiet from the day before. Silent. The kind of silence that happens when a machine part tells the truth before people are ready to hear it. Daniel looked at Celeste. Not with triumph. Not with anger. But with the exhausted calm of a man who had waited too many years for someone else to see what had been there all along. Celeste recovered first because powerful people practice recovery more than honesty. Stop. Her voice cracked through the garage. No one touches another thing. Reggie stepped back, still holding the cover. Evan Pike moved closer to the engine. His face tight now. "Ms. Harrington," he said quietly. "We need to control access to this unit immediately." Celeste glared at him. "We need to remove this man immediately." Evan did not look at her. He looked at the exposed stamp. Then at Daniel. "No. If he is right, this is no longer a security issue. It is an authorship and liability issue." Mila's eyes flicked to Daniel's application. Still, in her hand, where the same name sat in black ink. Ordinary and impossible. Daniel stepped back before anyone could tell him to. "I gave you 30 seconds, he said. Celeste's face had lost all amusement. "You have no right to make claims about this company's property." Daniel nodded toward the engine. "That engine is your property. The work on it still has a name." Evan Pike turned to Reggie. "Seal the garage. Nobody enters without written authorization." Then he turned to Daniel with the careful tone of a man building a bridge over a hole that had just opened under his employer. "Mr. Vale, if Harrington Automotive requests your continued assistance, it will be under a written consultant agreement, with board witness, liability protection, defined payment terms, and official access protocols." Celeste looked at Evan as if he had betrayed her. But he was not betraying her. He was protecting the company from the truth she had tried to laugh out of the room. Daniel picked up his folder and slid the exposed photocopy back inside. For a moment, he saw Noah in his mind. sitting in the lobby with the red toy car, wondering why adults had laughed at his father's name. Daniel had not fixed the engine. He had not restored anything. He had only recognized what everyone else had been trained not to see. And that recognition had changed the room. When Daniel walked back toward the elevator, Reggie did not block him this time. Mila did not look away. Celeste stood beside the dead prototype engine, furious and still, while the hidden stamp under the lifted cover seemed louder than any engine roar. Just before the doors closed, Evan Pike's voice followed Daniel across the garage. "Mr. Vale," he said, "do not speak to the press. Do not post anything. Give me 2 hours to draft terms." Daniel turned. "I waited 16 years. He said, "I can wait 2 hours." The elevator doors closed on Celeste's face. And for the first time since he had walked into Harrington Automotive with a mop bucket, no one in that building was laughing. 2 hours became 5. Daniel spent them in his garage with the door half open. Not because he wanted fresh air, but because the place felt smaller after the truth had followed him home. Noah sat at the workbench pretending to do homework while staring at his father's phone every time it buzzed. The red toy race car sat beside his pencil case like a tiny witness. Daniel had changed out of the shirt he wore to Harrington, but he had not put the old notebook away. It lay open on the bench to the page marked VX7A. Rev. D. V. Final, pass. He did not touch it often. He only looked at it the way a man looks at a door he has finally found after years of walking around the same locked wall. When the email arrived, it was not from Celeste. It was from Evan Pike, General Counsel, with the subject line, Temporary Technical Consultant Agreement. Daniel read every line twice. Harrington Automotive would allow him supervised access to Unit VX7A for historical verification only. Reggie Cole would serve as garage witness. A board observer would be notified. No repair work would be performed without separate authorization. Harrington would pay Daniel a $75,000 consultant fee, cover legal review, and acknowledge in writing that Daniel was not responsible for any prior condition of the engine. Celeste had added one sentence through counsel: all findings would remain confidential until reviewed by the board. Daniel stared at that line the longest. Confidential was a clean word. Sometimes it meant careful. Sometimes it meant buried. Noah leaned over his shoulder. "Does that mean they believe you?" Daniel looked at his son, then at the toy car on the bench. "It means they know I might be right." Noah frowned. "Is that enough?" Daniel folded his hands for a moment. He wanted to say yes because fathers want to give children answers that fit inside a safe world. But the world had never been that kind to him. "It is enough to get back in the room," he said. "After that, the room has to decide what kind of people are standing in it." He signed the agreement after a local attorney, an old customer who still owed him for a transmission job, reviewed the protections and told him not to walk into that building without a copy in his pocket. The next morning, Daniel arrived at Harrington Automotive without a mop bucket. He wore a clean gray work shirt, the same old boots, and carried his tool bag in one hand and a folder in the other. Security did not stop him at the lobby desk this time. That alone changed the lobby. People noticed when a man who had been escorted out came back through the same doors with a legal escort and a badge that said consultant. Mila Torres met him near the elevators. She looked tired, as if she had not slept much. "Mr. Vale," she said quietly, "before we go down, there is something you should see." She handed him a photocopy folded twice. At the top was an old intake sheet from 2011. The ink had faded, but the handwritten initials beside Final Revision Review were still clear: D. V. Daniel did not ask how she got it. He only looked at Mila long enough for her to understand that he knew what helping him could cost. "Why give me this?" he asked. Mila glanced toward the executive floor cameras. "Because yesterday, when Ms. Harrington told security to remove you, She also told archives to restrict every file with the word Vale in it. I have worked here 8 years. I have seen people protect the company. That did not look like protecting the company. Daniel slid the photocopy into his folder. You may have just made yourself a witness. Mila's mouth tightened. Maybe someone should have been one 16 years ago. Down in the Heritage garage, the engine waited under brighter lights. Reggie had sealed the area with red tape and a digital access log. Evan Pike stood with a board observer named Harold Benton, a gray-haired man who did not waste words. Celeste was there too, but she kept her distance from the engine, as if proximity had become dangerous. This inspection is narrow, Evan said. Stamp confirmation. Revision identification. Document comparison. No attempt to start the unit. No public statement. Daniel nodded. I am not here to make it roar. I am here to let it tell the truth. The sentence landed softly, but Reggie looked down at the concrete as if he felt it. Daniel did not move like a magician. He moved like a man returning to work he had once been too young to protect. He asked Reggie to remove the cover fully, then requested a low-angle inspection light and a soft solvent approved by conservation staff. Celeste objected until Evan reminded her that the agreement allowed non-invasive cleaning of the marked surface. Daniel touched only the edge of the old coating, working slowly until the letters emerged from under paint and dust. D. Vale, VX Rev C. The full stamp was not large. It did not glitter. It did not look like justice. It looked like a worker's mark placed where only another worker would think to look. Yet when Harold Benton saw it, he removed his glasses and stopped pretending this was a minor matter. Daniel then pointed to 3 details, each one brief, each one clear enough for non-engineers to understand. The fasteners were clocked for late Rev C access, not the early display unit described on the plaque. The oil routing plug had been hand-machined after casting, matching the sketch in Daniel's notebook, and the intake sheet Mila had saved listed the same revision sequence, same initials, and same inspection date. He did not lecture. He did not bury them in numbers. He simply placed the engine, the paper, and the mark beside one another until the lie had nowhere clean left to stand. Collectors were not paying for polish, Daniel said. They were paying for provenance. And your provenance is wrong. Celeste crossed her arms. One stamp does not rewrite company history. Daniel looked at her then, and for the first time there was something sharper than patience in his face. No, but a stamp. An intake sheet. A revision pattern. And a sealed dyno record might. Evan turned toward him. What sealed dyno record? Daniel opened his notebook to a page with a date circled in blue ink. Final Rev C validation. March 18. 2011. My father kept a note because the envelope was sealed before the restructuring meeting. The original should still be in your archive. Unless someone destroyed it. The board observer looked at Evan. Evan looked at Celeste. Celeste looked at nobody. That was answer enough for everyone to feel the floor shift. By noon, Harrington's legal team had found the archive reference, but not the envelope. By 2, Mila found it in a secondary heritage storage index under X7 promotional risk materials. A label so strange it made Evan curse under his breath. By 4, the board called for an independent reviewer before the investor event scheduled the next day. That was when Leonard Cross entered the story. He was 68, a retired racing engineer and historian whose name still made collectors answer their phones. He had verified prototype lineage for museums, estates, and private buyers who cared more about original metal than shiny paint. He agreed to come because someone told him the code VX7A had reappeared, and because he had once heard a rumor that the engine that saved the X7 program did not carry the Harrington name in its hidden places. Celeste tried one final route before the public presentation. She called Daniel into a glass conference room overlooking the garage floor. Evan sat at one end. Harold Benton sat at the other. Celeste did not sit. She stood by the window with the city behind her, returning to the version of herself that knew how to command rooms. "Mr. Vale," she said, "tomorrow's event involves a $30 million heritage partnership. If you turn this into a personal grievance, you hurt hundreds of employees. Not just me." Daniel kept his folder closed. "I did not mislabel the engine." Celeste's eyes flashed. "You want money. Say the number." The room went still. Evan lowered his eyes as if he wished she had chosen any other sentence. Daniel thought of the lease notice folded in his pocket. He thought of Noah eating cereal for dinner without complaining because he knew groceries were being stretched. He thought of Mara telling him that their son should know what his father built with his hands. Money mattered. Only people who had too much of it pretended it did not. But it was not the thing Celeste was trying to buy. "You can pay me for my work," Daniel said. "You can settle what your company owes, but you cannot purchase my silence about my name." Celeste's face hardened. "Then tomorrow, you will stand in front of people who know far more than you and prove it." Daniel rose. "No," he said. "Tomorrow the engine will." The heritage presentation was designed to impress men who had seen everything and still wanted to own more. The private showroom was transformed with lights, velvet ropes, champagne trays, and a black curtain behind which Unit VX7A waited on its stand. Board members gathered near the front. Investors from the Mobility Museum Consortium took seats beside collectors and journalists invited under limited access rules. Noah was not supposed to be there. But Harold Benton had approved a family guest badge after Daniel asked. So Noah stood near the back beside Mila, holding the red toy race car in both hands, wearing the one button-down shirt he owned. Daniel saw him before Celeste began speaking. That mattered more than the crowd. Celeste took the stage with perfect posture and a voice polished for cameras. She spoke of legacy, innovation, and the Harrington family's commitment to engineering excellence. She called the X7 program the heart of the company's modern identity. Then, with a smile that did not reach her eyes, she introduced Daniel as a former temporary worker who has raised questions about a historical display unit. It was a careful insult. Wrapped in corporate silk, a few people glanced at Daniel's boots. Noah saw them do it. Daniel saw Noah see it. But this time Daniel did not stand in the lobby with a mop bucket. This time the engine was in the room. And the engine had waited long enough. Leonard Cross stepped forward after Celeste finished. He wore a brown jacket, no tie, and carried a leather folder stuffed with old photographs. He did not look impressed by the lights. "Before anyone asks whether this engine runs," he said, "understand something. A prototype can be dead and still speak. Sometimes the metal remembers more honestly than the company brochure." The first murmur moved through the room. Celeste's expression tightened. Cross asked for the curtain to be removed. Unit VX7A appeared under white light. No longer hidden in the basement garage. The plaque still read Harrington X7 Legacy Prototype. Non-operational display unit. But a temporary evidence tag now hung near the oil gallery cover. Cross began with the plaque. He read it aloud. Then, shook his head once. "This description is incomplete at best." He asked Daniel to identify the revision markers without touching the engine. Daniel pointed to the fastener pattern, the hand-machined oil routing plug, and the covered stamp location. Cross compared each detail with 2 archival photographs from his folder. Then, with the intake sheet Mila had preserved, the investors leaned forward. A board member whispered to Evan. Celeste interrupted. "We have not yet established that any of this changes the engine's official authorship." Cross looked at her over his glasses. "That is what the sealed dyno envelope is for." The envelope was brought out in a clear sleeve by Harold Benton himself. Its seal was cracked in front of the room, slowly enough that no one could claim theater had replaced evidence. Inside were 3 pages, a final validation sheet, a handwritten technician note, and a small black-and-white photograph of Unit VX7A on a test stand in 2011. The validation sheet listed the Rev C oil correction as passed. The handwritten note described the same access cover Daniel had identified. At the bottom, in faded ink, were two signatures: Elias Vale, supervising machinist, and Daniel Vale, final test support. Cross placed the photograph beside the exposed stamp. The same hidden surface, the same code, the same name. The room went silent. Not uncertain. Not polite. Silent. Celeste Harrington, who had laughed at a janitor application 2 days earlier, stood before investors, board members, employees, and her own company history with nothing left to laugh at. Daniel looked back and found Noah in the crowd. His son was not smiling. He was staring at the engine, then at the paper, then at his father, as if a missing piece of the world had clicked into place. Cross spoke into that silence. In my professional opinion, Unit VX7A is not merely a non-operational display prototype. It is the final corrected Rev C engine that made the X7 program viable. And the physical evidence supports that the Vale name was materially connected to that correction. The first sound came from one of the investors closing his portfolio. Our consortium cannot proceed with the Heritage Partnership until the provenance record is corrected, he said. It was not loud, but Celeste flinched as if it had been. Evan Pike stood next, pale but controlled. On behalf of council, I recommend the board suspend tomorrow's partnership signing, open an independent historical review, and issue a preliminary correction regarding the VX7A display record. Harold Benton added the part no one expected him to say in public. Effective immediately. Ms. Harrington will step back from direct oversight of the Heritage Division pending review. That was when the consequence became real. Not an apology. Not embarrassment. Authority removed. Money frozen. And the story she had polished for years taken out of her hands. Celeste looked at Daniel with anger first. Then something almost like fear. Because she finally understood that he had not come for revenge in the way she knew how to fight. He had come for a record. Records are dangerous because they survive moods, wealth, and performance. You have what you wanted, she said, low enough that only those nearby heard. Daniel looked at the engine, then at Noah. No, he said. I have what was already there. Cross closed his folder. Mr. Vale, he said. Your father would have wanted this scene. Daniel's throat tightened. But he did not answer. There are moments grief enters a room quietly. Not to hurt you again, but to witness that something lost has finally been named. The correction did not happen all at once. Real justice rarely arrives like thunder. It comes through documents, signature, revised plaques, and uncomfortable meetings where powerful people use calm voices to admit what should have been admitted years ago. Harrington Automotive issued a preliminary statement acknowledging that the VX7A Rev C prototype record had been incomplete and that Elias and Daniel Vale were connected to the final correction work. The board approved Daniel's consultant payment and opened settlement discussions tied to misattributed technical contribution. The investor consortium did not cancel the $30 million partnership, but it froze the signing until the company completed the correction. Celeste remained CEO, but the Heritage Division was placed under board supervision, and her name was removed from the investor presentation deck she had planned to dominate. Daniel did not celebrate in the way people expected. He paid the garage lease first, $4,800. Overdue utilities included. Receipt printed and folded into the same metal box that held the old notebook. Then he bought groceries without counting every item twice. Then he took Noah back to Harrington's Heritage Garage on a quiet evening after the crowd. The investors and the cameras were gone. Reggie let them in. Mila was there too, standing near the newly printed temporary plaque. She smiled when Noah walked past her, still holding the red toy race car like it had a right to be there. Maybe it did. It had waited through the lobby insult, The garage, fear. And the silence that changed everything. The temporary plaque was simple. It did not make Daniel a legend. It did not turn pain into something neat. It read Harrington.X7 prototype engine. Unit VX7A. Rev. T. Final oil system correction work attributed to Elias Vale and Daniel Vale. Harrington Advanced Garage. 2011. Noah read it slowly. Moving his lips around the words, Daniel watched him reach the name. Val. For a second. Daniel heard Mara's voice from years before. Tired but certain. Saying Noah should know what his father built with his hands. He had thought keeping quiet was a form of protection. Now, looking at his son in the soft light beside the dead engine, he understood that silence can protect a wound and still starve a child of the truth. Noah turned to him. So when she called you just a janitor? She was wrong. Daniel crouched until they were eye to eye. There is nothing wrong with being a janitor, he said. A man who cleans a floor with dignity is worth more than a person who lies from a glass office. But she was wrong about why I was there. And she was wrong about our name. Noah looked back at the engine. Can it ever run? Daniel smiled a little. Maybe one day. Carefully, but that is not what made it valuable. Noah frowned in the serious way children do when they want to understand adult things exactly. Daniel touched the edge of the toy race car. It was valuable because it told the truth. Before they left, Noah placed the red toy race car on the workbench beside the engine stand. Just for a second, he said. Daniel nodded. The little car looked almost silly beside the old prototype V8. But Daniel could not take his eyes off it. The big machine had carried a hidden name for 16 years. The small toy had carried a boy through 2 years of missing his mother. One day of watching his father humiliated. And one night of seeing a room full of rich people fall silent. Noah picked it back up and slipped it into his pocket. Dad, he asked as they walked toward the elevator. Can we keep your name this time? Daniel stopped at the door and looked back at Unit VX7A. It was still dead. Still dusty in places. Still waiting for careful hands and honest records. But it no longer looked forgotten. The temporary plaque caught the light. Reggie stood near the entrance with his cap in his hands. Mila wiped at one eye and pretended she was checking her phone. Daniel put his hand on Noah's shoulder. Yeah, he said softly. This time, we keep it, and when they stepped out into the evening, Harrington's glass tower no longer looked untouchable. It looked like any other building built by human hands. Capable of hiding a lie. Capable of admitting the truth. And not nearly as tall as a quiet father walking beside his son with his name restored.